We just didn't have the correct infrastructure. Another thing that I actually learned, what's her name? Her name was Jordan is my lawyer. She actually did a quick video. I'll probably share the link. There is an approved bill to have like, I think an additional 7 water reservoirs to help fight fires like these. None of them were done. Like literally none of them were done. So as of right now, and I don't think the first one's going to be done until 2025. So as of right now, we still don't have the correct infrastructure in order to fight another wildfire of this magnitude. You know what I mean? So like, why would you feel safe building something uh, as a developer new on these properties, knowing that you're just going to be at risk for the exact same things? Legacy impact and generational wealth. So you can live that uncommon life. But in order to do that, you need to be uncommon. Hey, my name is Joey, aka Mr. J Mace.
Hey, and I'm AD, also known as AD the Fly Realtor.
Perfect. So, with that being said, as most of you guys know, we live in Southern California, and we've obviously been devastated by these wildfires that have, ravaged a significant part of, where we live, and it is shaking up the real estate market quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I believe that these recent wildfires have completely changed the landscape of investing in real estate in general from this point forward in California. You know what I mean? That's where I stand. I think AD has a different opinion on that.
I mean, I think it may be true that it completely changed the landscape moving forward, but I think we have different points of views as far as what that change means.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, I really don't think from this point forward, as an investor looking in, like, is it smart to really invest in California, especially Southern California? Like, looking at this, it's like, I don't think it's a smart or a safe investment. You know what I mean?
But see, why strictly because of the fires, or why would you say that?
Well, okay, think about this. Yeah, I mean, it partially has to do with the fires, but let's focus on the main point here. A whole bunch, I'm not even sure how many. I have a short list of all the insurance companies that left California, back in 2023 and 2022. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not a super long list. Let me pull this up really quickly. Uh, I had it all here. State Farm, Farmers Insurance, Toki Marine Insurance, Trans-Pacific Insurance, a bunch of other smaller carriers, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a bunch, like 8 smaller carriers also left the state of California. It just shows you like, okay, they saw something. There's something that they saw, especially when it comes to these California wildfires, that are like, you know what, it's not safe for us to cover these properties in the state of California, especially in Southern California, when we have these wildfires that come out and take out tons of property at a time. This past fire took out over 12,000 structures. It burned over 50,000 acres of land. This was just within a few days. You know what I mean? So I don't see it being a very smart especially for a new investor. What I'll say is it definitely gives you reason to pause before you start your next investment project in the state of California.
I mean, I can definitely understand that point of view where you're coming from with that. But in order to fully understand this, we got to go back to when those insurance companies left. So what happened was, and this has been an ongoing like crisis in California for a while. Not a lot of people were aware of it. The average Joe wasn't aware of it, especially if you don't own real estate or work in real estate. A lot of people really weren't aware of this, but this has been ongoing for a few years. But what happened is the state of California is not allowing insurance companies to raise premiums to account for the increase in risk that they take on in these specific areas. So for that reason is why they left. So not directly, not singularly because there are wildfires or, natural disaster risk. It's the actual fact that the state of California would not allow them to increase the cost. So, it doesn't make any sense. So, like, think about it this way: like, you went to the grocery store, the cost for them to get the groceries to the store increased. So, what do? That the cost of that goes on to the buyer. you know what I mean? Which is us when we go to the grocery store and buy our groceries. But this is how the economy works. You know what I mean? The prices of things go up. So now somebody else has to take the brunt of that burden. So the fact that California did not allow these insurance companies to operate like that, which is the way all businesses operate, they have to increase prices at some point, depending on what's going on. Because California did not allow these companies to do that, that is why they left. So it is my opinion and the opinion of a lot of people that because that happened or because this has now happened, there is going to be some kind of, action to reverse that and to make sure that people are able to be properly insured in this state. But beyond that, there are still insurance options available. It's just not as widespread. But then also, there's several layers to this, but we'll touch on that a little bit later, I'm sure.
Think of people who already had policies with these insurance holders. And I've seen this actually happen to a few people that I know where they were getting ready to leave California. So they decided to raise their premiums up to a point where they couldn't pay. It was just, astronomically high. They're like, either you pay this premium or you cancel, and we're getting our asses out of here right now anyways. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think that just pretty much furthers my point. You're seeing insurance companies here in California leading, no matter the reason, they see a risk. They see a risk and they decide we want to go somewhere where we face less risk. You know what I mean? So
I don't think it's that simple though. It's not just the fact that they want to have less risk. Like this is what they do. You know what I mean? They insure for, in case of risk or in case of, danger or disaster, things like that. The problem really is that California did not allow the free marketplace to run its course. That like that, which is a bigger discussion where if you don't allow economics to take place in the way that they naturally do, a lot of times, like when we have too many parties fidgeting with that, you know what I mean? It could throw off the economy of things. And that's what it's done for these insurance companies, and so the intent of the law, I think, came from a good place. So what they weren't were doing was restricting the ability of insurance companies to raise these premiums, but it's because they wanted California residents to not have to, just suffer increase in their spending, to have to pay more for their insurance. So I do understand that aspect, but when you don't allow for the free marketplace, like I said, to run its course, now you're causing disruption, and that disruption occurs with for these companies when, you know what I mean? Like I said, there's some things I want to say, but I don't want to jump the gun because I know we're going to touch on a couple other things. So, but I'll leave it at that.
no, and I get that. I completely understand that, they, insurance companies wanted to raise rates, which I mean, and they should. I hate to say it, because being somebody who pays for, different types of insurance, you don't want to pay more monthly. But the thing is, like, understanding the danger of wildfires, especially in California, when we have these pretty often, you know what I mean? An insurance company should have the right to raise that premium in order to
Exactly.
cover that risk. Now, that just goes back to my original point. It's making it harder for investors to feel safe, uh, building out their next projects out here because they're not going to be properly insured, whether, regardless of the reason why insurance companies are leaving, they're leaving. That's the fact. And with that, just let that you have in order to cover the property that you want to build.
I mean, while insurance costs are rising, they aren't unavailable. So I just want to make that clear. It's not as if like insurance companies are just gone and there's no options. Like there are still a lot of options. So if you're an investor, what that means is you would have to adjust your cash flow expectations, to account for that higher insurance premium. So that's all that means. It's just honestly like if you're investing, you really have to start putting things into numbers. Everything's a number. So all that means is whatever that number has now adjusted to, you have to figure out another number that you can crunch or, adjust or manipulate to make everything work out. So that's one thing. But then also, there are programs, also like the FAIR Plan, the California FAIR Plan, which it does still provide a safety net in high risk areas. So that's another thing I do want to bring up, where this will probably transition into our next point, where these fires are in high risk areas. So I live in West LA. I'm actually wasn't too far away from the Palisades fire, especially if you like look at the map. I wasn't too far, but I'm in an urban area. So the chances of the fires like catching here and not being able to be contained are a lot slimmer just because it's an urban area. It's not as much bushes or shrubbery and trees, the hillsides. Like, no, I live in the city. You know what I mean? So it's not everywhere in California that has this issue. It's more so rural locations or rural areas or the like a lot of people really don't know Palisades. Everybody just knows like just believes that there's wealthy people there, but Palisades has like a lot of like hillside. It's it's like Malibu or like going up the PCH, similar to that. A lot of hillsides, a lot of trees. Like it's different from being in the city. It's off to the side. Like there were a certain set of like it was a perfect storm for that Palisades fire to occur the way it did.
Okay. I want to bring up one story, and that's the story of Torres Beasley, 64-year-old lady. She had just finished off paying.
God, the old lady. I know it's gonna be something crazy. 'Cause now this dude wants to get sympathy, so you guys join his live.
She just finished paying her mortgage. The next day, completely destroyed. Her home completely destroyed by the fires. Now, we talk about insurance, right? And of course, it's great to one, insurance companies are leaving. But even the insurance that you have out here in California, it doesn't mean that they're going to compensate you correctly or properly for the loss of your home. I was just talking to one of my neighbors, and they're like, "Yeah, this guy who had this, 23,000 or sorry, $23 million home that burned down. Insurance is talking about giving him 6 million for that 23 million home that he built." So that once again, it just shows, and we all know whoever's ever had to deal with insurance companies and trying to get reimbursed for something, you know the type of hurdles that you're going to have to go through in order for them to dish out any cash to you. You know what I mean? Once again, it's just higher risk. So not only are insurance companies leaving, but the insurance companies that are covering you may not even cover you completely. They might just give you a partial cover based on your circumstances. So it once again, it just shows how, it's bringing to light the issues when it comes to investing out here or building out here in Southern California.
So there's different kinds of insurance coverages. So this is actually good. Well, not good. Like it's very unfortunate for those who were affected. But I mean, for other people, they should really look at this as a opportunity to learn because what happened to the individual you were talking about that they're only going to cover them for a certain amount. What happens a lot of times is you get insured for the amount of your property when you purchase that property. So to make it simple, I bought a property for 500,000. My insurance is covering a $500,000 home. Move on. But what happens is over time, as the cost of that property appreciates, as the cost of parts and things to like build a property go, the cost of that property won't be the same. There are certain coverages in insurance that you can get to make sure that it covers the current value of a property as opposed to just the purchase value. So that's something that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people, they get their insurance, they set it and forget it, and they just leave it alone. And it's, as nice as and convenient as that would be to be able to do, you really have to take an active approach when it comes to, the protection of your assets and or if you're an owner occupant, the protection of your family. You know what I mean? You really have to take an active role and you can't just let it be a set it and forget it. There are certain things that every year or every 6 months you should be checking on your coverages. I'm positive most investors right now are checking, you know what I mean? Like calling their companies and saying, wait, am I covered for this, this, and this? Because also too, if you're an investor, your insurance, it's a lot different than homeowners insurance. Oftentimes, like if you're not living in the property, like you need rental property insurance, which is a completely different story. I don't want to get too far away from the point. But you know what I mean? It's just good for people to make sure they're aware of what they're covered for and what's going to happen to them in case of disaster. Because that's oftentimes the people you see most affected, the people who don't know what they're going to do or how to proceed after a disaster comes. The people who already knew what to do and how they were going to maneuver, they're not as worried. They're more so concerned about their personal belonging, and this home that they just built memories in is now gone. So that I am glad we touched on that because it's important for people to really be aware of what happens in a worst case scenario situation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that we touched on this as well because that is something that I didn't really think of. Covering the purchase price of the home opposed to covering the actual, appreciated value of the I thought that, it would cover the appreciated value of the home regardless. I didn't know that it would just stop at the purchase price or there's policies that would just stop at the purchase price, which now that I'm thinking of that, I'm pretty sure the majority of insurances will probably just cover the purchase price.
Exactly. And I'm glad I just found it. It's called replacement cost coverage. I'm not an insurance professional, so maybe talk to somebody or look it up on your own. But it covers the actual cost to rebuild or repair your property to its original condition, accounting for current material and labor costs. You know what I mean? So that's what happened. So it's like, okay, yeah, when I bought the property, it cost whatever it did. That was 25 years ago, or some of these people, that was 50 years ago. You know what I mean? So what does it cost now for me to get that same property? Placement cost coverage will be able to assure you in that event.
Mm, okay. Well, I mean, it brings me to my next point on why it's extremely difficult to have an optimistic view of building out here in California, or at least Southern California, because how frequently do we have these fires? You know what I mean? We have a wildfire, I want to say at least 2 to 3 times a year. You know what I mean? These things happen it's not like, you're down in Florida somewhere and you're getting hit by a hurricane, like a huge hurricane that comes and wipes you out, but it's not gonna come all the time. It comes every few years or so. And there's ways that you can prepare for that.
I mean, well, for one, no,
These fires in
go ahead, sorry.
yeah, these fires in California, they happen every year, at least twice a year. You know what I mean? And with that, do we even have actually, I'm not gonna roll into that. I was actually gonna roll into the third point with what I just said, but
The equalize speed. You are trying to off me real quick. No, it's cool. I'm ready. I can take the hit. I can take the hits.
But yeah, they happen quite frequently. Like I said, this particular time, over 12,000 structures destroyed, over 50,000 acres burned. But there's several other smaller fires that happen every single year. At least two or three of them are major wildfires. So, like, what's the safety in that? Especially knowing that insurance companies aren't going to cover you that well.
Yeah, so like you said, there are certain parts of the country where they have storms every year, and it's not every couple years. Like just like the wildfires, it's every year, but it just may be bigger or smaller on in a particular year. So, but in order to mitigate that risk, investors can minimize like exposure to wildfire by targeting areas with like lower risk of like lower fire hazards or properties with fire resistant designs. You know what I mean? So it's like those are things you could do to like mitigate that risk and still be investing. And then also, there's tools on camera, FEMA, like the organization that helps people. Yeah, FEMA, they have a map. I'm really losing it up. Like it's called a FEMA map or something to that effect. It might come to me later. But anyways, what this map does is you're able to look at the map and see the areas that are at a higher risk of wildfire. So you can make sure to steer clear of that. Like I said, like I was close to the wildfire, but at no point was I too worried about it hitting, my home base just because I know like there's a lot of urban area in between me and like where that was. And if you like could look at the map, I wish I could show you real quick, but the map you would even see there's a lot of greenery where the fire is currently and was before they started to contain more of it. It's a lot of greenery, like I said, hillsides, trees, all those type of things added onto that fire. But like I'm sure the FEMA map will show you, oh, the more you go inland into the urban location, there's less of a risk for fire. So things like that. And then also there's ways that you can provide stability for your property by, like I said, the fireproofing designs. So these are things that you could do to properties. This is kind of next level because if you're developing or if you just want to increase, it is next level. But if you want to increase the value of your property, you can add that. Especially that's probably more so for somebody in the risk of the fire. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say just anybody should like go pay for fireproofing designs. You know what I mean? Unless you just have the money to and you find it important. But I don't think anybody should just do that. But yeah, definitely if you have an investment property and the risk of that fire, that might be something you want to consider.
I mean, it could help mitigate. It could help mitigate, but I mean, there are a lot of like home and structures and actual full communities that were built in the Palisades. You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah, yeah.
weren't wiped out. You know what I mean? So there is that. And the next thing that I did want to talk about is just let's talk about the infrastructure, right? I think within I want to say I think it was the first day of the Palisades fire, uh, the fire hydrants ran out of water in order to put those bad boys out. You know what I mean? We just didn't have the correct infrastructure. Another thing that I actually learned, what's her name? Her name was Jordan is my lawyer. She actually did a quick video. I'll probably share the link. There is an approved bill to have like, I think an additional 7 water reservoirs to help fight fires like these. None of them were done. Like literally none of them were done. So as of right now, and I don't think the first one's going to be done until 2025. So as of right now, we still don't have the correct infrastructure in order to fight another wildfire of this magnitude. You know what I mean? So like, why would you feel safe building something uh, as a developer new on these properties, knowing that you're just going to be at risk for the exact same things?
So for one, as a developer, I might not build in the same exact locations. That's one. But then two, I don't want to dive into this too much. I want to stay on the real estate end.
Before you continue on, but what about the folks that own that land? Like, are they not going to want to rebuild their home on the land that they own? You know what I mean?
I don't know what they're gonna want to do. You know what I mean? They might take their money from insurance and go do something else. I don't know what they would do. I really don't. Like, this is a time for those people to, look inward and then consult with their families and figure out what the best move for them would be currently.
But what I'm saying is like, you have that and you own that parcel of land, like, and you're like, okay, I want to rebuild. I mean, you might be putting yourself at risk for the exact same thing that just happened, recently, is wildfires. So it's just something to ponder, knowing that we still don't have the correct infrastructure to fight things like this.
Yeah. I mean, see, so my thing is, I a lot of people are like playing into this. There's no country on earth has the technology to shut down that fire as quickly as it was like burning. You know what I mean? There's no technology on this planet, no country, no civilization that has the capability to stop that fire at the rate that it was burning. You know what I mean? I don't think yet all the details are out as far as like what fully went wrong, but I do know some of it is the fact that the hydrants started to be empty because they were at 4 times their max capacity of usage for, several days already. And then they started to like run out of water. You know what I mean? That kind of nobody can anticipate 4 times past capacity. You know what I mean? Like that's just beyond anything. And they said the rate at which the fire was spreading was like a football field in I can't even remember, like, a matter of minutes. You know what I mean? Like, nobody has the technology to stop that kind of fire with the kind of winds we had those days. Like, the winds were crazy. I do actually remember, like, because this was before I realized how bad the fire got. I remember thinking, like, why is it so windy? Like, this is insane. You know what I mean? Like, winds were insane for 2 straight days. Like, all these things compiled for that. But anyways, in regard to the infrastructure, like I said, like nobody has the technology to stop that kind of fire that fast. But at this point forward, I have no doubt in me that the certain people in position to affect change and cause change aren't going to, you know what I mean? It's not going to go down like that ever again. I mean, because think about everything that happens. Like after 9/11, everything changed in airports. You know what I mean? TSA became a thing after, you know what I mean? So it's like after the disaster is when the corrective action is now going to take place. it's hard for me to believe that, okay, a fire like that is gonna happen just like that, unless it would have to be just another perfect scenario or perfect storm for that kind of devastation to occur.
No, and I agree with that. But as of right now, like, let's just say that the reservoirs that were supposed to be built out, by now, say we did have those 7 reservoirs. I understand that this, no matter how much technology we have, we weren't prepared, but we would want to be as prepared as we can be. And even though things are going to change from this point forward, how long is it going to take for those changes to take effect to where residents and people feel safe enough to be like, yeah, I really, I believe that, we have the right infrastructure, we have the right type of coverages. We feel safe moving forward and investing in these areas when you could just go somewhere else where you don't have to deal with that and invest. You know what I mean? So it's just
Probably about as long as it'll take to build the property back up. I mean, like, when you wanna get a property built, it's not just a matter of, like, go build this property, which this is a whole 'nother issue because we need zoning, restrictions to be loosened, but you know what I mean? But, you know what I mean? It's gonna take a while, so and again, that's why I'm saying that, like, I don't know if you should invest in that same area because this conversation is a little different if you were in your primary home and if you were an investor. So I'm more so leaning towards like somebody who's investing or, buying properties with the purpose of investing, even if you're an owner occupant investor. So my thing is like if you're that person, I mean, you just have to go to where the action is or to where you feel more safe. So if that means moving that money to an urban area, then move that money to an urban area. If that means maybe moving it down to another part of LA or the outskirts of LA, then do that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to just completely leave the state of California because there's rural portion that, you know what I mean, is at higher risk to a wildfire.
yeah. Makes sense. But we haven't even really touched on what this wildfire has done to the current climate of real estate. You know what I mean? Like people love California because real estate prices, if you own real estate already, they appreciate pretty quick and you have a shit ton of money off of a property that you bought. You could have bought a property in 1990 for, 190,000 that's worth like 500K now or even more. You know what I mean? And people
Yeah,
love that.
probably way more.
Way more, you know what I mean? So and people love that, but as of right now, with all of those structures falling, now we have a shortage in the market, you know what I mean? And we have so many people who have been put out of their homes that are looking for new homes to occupy. So now this is gonna cause, bidding wars out in the market because, people are looking for property. Now prices of property in California are going to get a little higher because there's just so much since there's so much more demand due to these fires. You know what I mean? So like even if you were an investor looking to possibly grab a property right now, you're probably going to be grabbing it at a much higher price than you would have prior to these fires.
I mean, all of it, pretty much nothing you said sounds bad to me because like you're saying that okay, because of this now there's even higher demand. Well, if I'm an investor, I want there to be demand for my units. That's a good thing. And then because of this, it might be harder for people to be able to buy properties. Like, that could actually be a good thing, especially if you're resilient and you know how to pivot. Because if you're resilient and you know how to pivot, you'll find out how to buy property. But then the people who aren't so resilient, they'll wither to the wayside. So you don't have to compete with them anymore. So that actually could be a good thing as an investor. You know what I mean? Like, again, if for people just buying primary homes, it's a little bit different. This changes up a lot for you. Completely different conversation. But as far as an investor, like, yeah, these are things you want because, like you said, appreciation in California is unparalleled. You know what I mean? Over decades, like, even with the periodic risk, real estate here has consistently outperformed pretty much every other market in this country. Like that's just a fact. You can look that up. So not you personally, I mean the audience, but that's just a fact. You know what I mean? So while the risk exists, the long-term payoff from appreciation, and then we also have the high rental demand here, that outweighs the challenges, at least in my opinion. You know what I mean? So if you're an investor and you're willing to take a calculated risk and adapt your strategy when needed, I think you could still come out ahead and you could still thrive in this market.
Right. I mean, and that's great. That's an awesome perspective. That's a great optimistic perspective for maybe seasoned investors.
It's not an optimistic perspective. It's just a realistic perspective.
But if we're talking about
But that is
a new investor who really wants to get their feet wet, they're like, okay, I really want to hop into my first investment property. And you've been saving or you've been getting financing for these properties, and all of a sudden prices jump. You're like, damn, like I don't know if I was prepared for this. We're just in a point where interest rates are just now starting to drop. You know what I mean? So people were getting ready to hop back in the market pretty strong. But then with these fires, now these prices are probably going to jump. They're going to jump. You know what I mean? So I don't think that the interest rates are low enough to a point where you feel comfortable. Like, oh man, like I would love to hop in this property, even though it jumped like a 50 grand or 100K. I don't know if that's plausible for the new investor.
see, you know what it really comes down to? What it really comes down to is anybody who was buying property or planning to buy property or actually going to buy property before this happened, they're going to continue to do so. Anybody who was going to find a reason to not buy property, they're going to find their reason. You know what I mean? So it's like, it always goes back down. It goes back to the same thing. Like the hustlers are always going to find a way to get it. You know what I mean? And those who aren't as much, they probably won't. You know what I mean? So like, that's really what it's going to come down to. So all these things that come up as issues or why it's so hard, that's just going to make, like I said, the hustler's still going to go out there and get it. Like, so, cause here's my thing to you. I got a question for you. So you're saying for a beginner, like all these things can make you scared to go invest, right? So do you think, put your mind in the shoes of a beginner or somebody who's investing for the first time. Do you think that because it's harder to do, that there's not going to be anybody who finds a way to do it and capitalize off of the fact that they got in when it looked like it was so hard?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be people that capitalize off that
So then why can't that be you?
because that's
Like, well, how come because something's hard, like because something's hard, I just don't want to do it? Like, come on, man, don't punk out just because something got difficult. Like, why you gonna punk out?
there's definitely people who are going to capitalize off of this. And these are what I'm saying is
Exactly.
what I'm saying is this.
You better pull up the FEMA map. Pull up the FEMA map. Well, I know where the risk is and go somewhere else. That's what it is.
All I'm saying is this. Like, yeah, people will definitely come out successful in this for sure. I can guarantee it. As a matter of fact, any good investor, or I'm not going to say any good investor, but I've got some great investment advice, and it says when everybody's zigging, you zag. You do the opposite of what the main market is doing, and I get that.
Exactly.
But with that, you do need the proper guidance in order to make sure that happens, that ends well for you. You know what I mean? What I'm saying is, yeah, as far as the conditions aren't conducive for people who are really excited to get in investing and want to be successful when these specific conditions, they probably got in a wave where a lot of people were getting ready to invest. And maybe that's where they are right now. You know what I mean? What we're talking about right now, thriving in a bad situation, is for somebody who has experience, for somebody who can rely or talk to somebody who's been in situations similar for it to name success.
Cap, I call Cap as the Gen D stay because like it there I personally know people and I've heard dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of podcasts of people who started investing in 2008, 2009. Like, oh, I just started investing. That's when I started investing. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. So it's like, don't tell me that a beginner can't can't start in the time of turmoil and figure out a way to flourish. As a matter of fact, I think the best time to be in something is when it seems like it's in that industry is in the phase of transition because you get to like be in there, you get to see the changes, witness what's going on, and then you become this person who now has all this knowledge of how things are supposed to be ran currently. So let's say I have been investing for a while. I could be so stuck to how my investing was in the early 2000s or in the 90s that now I'm like, oh, it's so much harder You know what I mean? That's going to be a difficult thing for you to do because now you think it's harder to invest. But then if you're a new person and there's nothing you have to compare it to, that's perfect because you already knew it was going to be hard. So if it's harder than you thought it was going to be, now you just got to adjust your perspective. Now you know what hard is. You thought you knew what hard is, you didn't. Now you know what hard is. This is hard. So move forward with that in mind. This is actually a great opportunity for the new investor. Actually, you just encouraged me. Now I'm even more excited, about to tell people that this is the real perfect time to invest in Southern California because people are scared and people don't know what to do. Yet we still have a lot of jobs here. We still, California actually turned the tide where for several years we had been losing residents. This past year we gained residents back. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, so it's like, you know what I mean? This is actually the time to invest in California. But again, check out that FEMA map because I don't know if you want to invest in, certain high risk areas. But outside of that, like, I don't see any reason why somebody would use this. Like, I'm not saying everybody should invest in California or should want to, but I don't see how you can use this scenario alone and say, because of this, I won't invest in California.
Well, no, I'm not saying this scenario alone. Obviously, there's been a lot of reasons why this is just an add-on to all the other reasons why most people wouldn't invest in California starting off. You know what I mean?
And that's why most people aren't successful. Like, bro, everything you're saying is like helping me prove my point. At least or like the entrepreneur investor, because like if I'm an investor, it's like, oh, like most people don't invest. It's like, yeah, that's why most people don't beat inflation. You know what I mean? Like most people are renting. Oh, that's why most people aren't increasing their net worth. Like, oh, most people don't want to invest in California. Exactly. Yeah, that's why most people won't reap the benefits of such. But then what's going to happen? We're going to see the same kinds of people taking the risk to invest, and they're going to reap all these benefits that other people could have gotten.
So what I'll say is this. I'm not saying that California's obviously we live in California. Obviously, we're gonna invest in California. Like that's a given. What I'm saying is understanding the risk that are out here. Why, like if you're a beginning investor, unless you know the area, unless you live out here in California and you know the spots to go and invest in. Like you said, he gave a great example. Find that FEMA map, figure out the places that have the lowest risk, and things of that nature. Unless you at least have somebody guiding you or who could be boots on the ground for you here. If I'm an investor and I have the choice to invest anywhere in the world or anywhere in Los Angeles, or not Los Angeles, but anywhere in America, and I see all of the different hurdles that I have to jump through in California, or I can go invest in Missouri real quick and not have to face all that. Like if I'm a beginning investor who just wants to get my first win, you know what I mean? And I can invest anywhere in the US, I'm not picking California first. It's a market that I will come to because of how quickly things appreciate. But as far as getting my first win and getting my feet wet, I may be like, you know what, let me hit Missouri, let me hit Kansas City, let me hit Tennessee. These other places where I don't have that much risk involved as far as all the risk that you have to take on in Cali.
No, and see, the thing is, but that's always been the case. Like, there's always been risk in investing, period, and then always more risk in California than other areas. But like it again, it just goes back to what I said, like that not everybody's built to take on specific kinds of risks. You know what I mean? And if you have to know yourself, like if that's not something, if you can't stomach the risk, like maybe you need to go to Montana and invest. You know what I mean? But if you're trying to invest in California, there are some risks you're gonna have to take on. But it doesn't mean that you're just out here blind or with your ass out, not knowing what you're gonna do when there's a disaster. Like you gotta position yourself and strategically move. And this has always been what we talked about on this show, where it's like, you have to ask questions, get a mentor, you know what I mean? Maybe partner with somebody who has a lot of experience. If you're a beginner, like maybe you shouldn't go out there and go buy your own property by yourself, like fully leveraged or, 97% leveraged. You know what I mean? Maybe you should go partner with somebody or put your money in a syndication. You know what I mean? I've heard of syndicate, like our friend Brandon from BCGK. Shout out to him. You know what I mean? Like he sends his investors like information on the properties they're invested in every month or every quarter or something like that. And then they have opportunities to go and see the properties. You know what I mean? If you invest in a syndication to start out as a beginner, you can learn about real estate right then and there. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you get to go touch the property with the person who's managing the property, who's managing the asset. Like, you know how many questions you can ask and learn so that you can go start investing on your own. So like again, don't let like trouble that arises just make you not do anything. Again, I'm not saying you have to invest in California, but like I would hate for be right now we're in the middle of the greatest like transfer of wealth this world has ever known. And I hate to think of the fact that like there's beginners, there's millennials, there's young professionals, there's black people, there's brown people, you know what I'm saying, who have an opportunity to capture some of this wealth that is being transferred or to create new wealth for the economy, but they don't because they're scared or because there's a risk. You know what I'm saying? Because somebody is gonna get this wealth. Yeah, it might as well be you.
And there's by no means do I do am I saying I'm saying this just so that we are aware of all sides here, but by no means
Yeah,
am
yeah,
I
yeah.
like don't invest or be so scared that you just stop investing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you need to make sure you're aware of the risk. You need to make sure that you're in, especially for the new investors, you want to make sure that first investment is perfect. You know what I mean? It may take you a little longer to find the right deal because it needs to fit the criteria that you set forth in order for you to feel comfortable in getting your first W. You know what I mean? So in these certain circumstances within California, so I'm not saying not to invest, but as AD said, find the perfect situation. Find the perfect situation where you know that you are going to be successful, and that way you can build your confidence and build your portfolio. And you need to be aware. You actually need to do what AD and I are doing right now. You need to evaluate all of the risks, all the things that could go wrong, and you also need to, be aware of all of the solutions around that in order to make an informed decision.
Right, right. I like that. But if I could add one thing, like I don't know if I would be looking for the perfect situation because I don't know if that exists. But find the situation that you can work with best, which is what I do think Joey meant anyways. But yeah, find the situation that you can deal with best and go from there. Like there's going to be some things that you might have to deal with that you don't like, but that's going to be everywhere. So figure out what those are for you.
Man, if we had a B for today, I think the B for today would just be grateful. Be grateful, man, because a lot of people lost homes. A lot of people, some people even lost their lives, and it just lets you, it reminds you of how precious life is. And the things that you use, these things are just objects and materials, but we have lives that we should be grateful for, and we should do the most with every day. You know what I mean? So
No, for real. Like I like that a lot because the other day I went to the post office. Like I bought a book and I got something going on where packages aren't coming to my home right now, so I have to go to the post office to get my packages. But anyways, I get there and I see like super long line and a bunch of people outside the post office, and I was like, "What is going on?" Turns out like those are residents from the Palisades fire because we shared the same post office. That's when it really became clear to me how close it really was. I was like, "Dang, we shared the post office." Like I had no clue they used my post office. And, I talked to a couple people and they were, like you said, it was just devastation. I felt really bad for some of these people. Like they lost everything and they're sitting here for like a couple hours waiting for someone to yell their name so they could get their mail. You know what I mean? So, like Joey said, be grateful, man. Like always keep in mind, you know what I mean? It sounds cliche, but like really consider the little things too, because the little things are something to be grateful for. So, with that said, you heard the man. Be grateful, be you, and be uncommon. Until next time, guys.